that recording. And so one of the things I was saying is that, you know, the different sessions we've had, all of the different speakers came from a different perspective, and it was nice to hear the various voices and experiences. So on Thursday, we had Reverend Karen Curry and Ernest Clover. And Reverend Karen Curry is with, she has a ministry herself around poetry and comedy now. And she's also a co-pastor over at the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church. And then Ernest Glover is the executive director at the DC Dream Center. And so the two of them talked about the partnership that they have in terms of providing food and supplies and getting people registered to vote during this time in COVID. And so that was just a blessing to be able to hear how their faith both motivates them. You know, the DC Dream Center is actually connected with National Community Church, pastored by Pastor Mark Batterson, and they both talked about how their faith compels them to be involved in the community. And so it also influences the way that they get involved. And so they talked about how their faith inspires them to share resources and to admit when they don't have the answers and admit when they've made mistakes. So that was nice to hear that perspective. And then last night we had a panel discussion on how, you know, talking about violence from different perspectives, both gun violence and also domestic violence. But we talked about how violence isn't just one act. You know, we tend to look at it through a narrow lens of one act committed by a perpetrator and experienced by a victim. And then you have different systems get involved, like the judicial system, but really, violence is like ocean waves. You know, it's the culmination of little disruptions over and over again in a number of systems. It could be in the family system. It could be in the school system where children were underserved and undereducated, and mental health systems where people were denied the services that they needed. And familial, you know, maybe a couple didn't get the support that they needed when there was tension. Even economic systems, sometimes somebody lost a job or someone was underemployed. And as you have these multiple ripples and effects culminating into persons' lives, they then become this massive wave that we experience as sometimes that one incident of violence. So when we address violence and we talk about preventing violence, we have to look at more than just that one incident. We have to look at what are all of the factors that can contribute to affecting a person and disrupting a person's lives that bring them to that place where you then experience an act of violence. And if the faith community can begin to plan strategically about how we can get involved in those various areas and systems, we can then begin to prevent the violence from happening in the first place. And so that was nice. We had, last night we had Pastor Devin Turner from Revolution DC Church. We had Pastor Delonte Golston from Peace Fellowship and DC Peace Walks. We had Queen Afi, who leads an organization called Domestic Violence Wears Many Tags. And she had a great perspective on domestic violence and educating people and raising awareness and lifting the silence. And then we also had Beverly Smith Brown, who is also with the Alliance of Concerned Men and Mama Safe Haven. And they talked about addressing trauma and getting ahead, you know, because trauma can sometimes feed on itself and sometimes traumatize people, inflict trauma on other people. And so it was a really interactive dialogue. We had great questions from the audience. And so we're thankful for that. So that's just sort of a recap of where we are. And so that brings us to here this morning. We have our agenda for today. This session is part of an overall Faith Impact Summit, and that summit is aimed to bring the faith community together to talk about how we can align our resources align our wisdom and our skills to be able to strategically address the challenges in our community, both here locally in DC, especially in Ward 7, but also as we saw in the different sessions, we had people chiming in from New York, Maryland, Philadelphia, and even from overseas. And so we want to begin to encourage people to link up, make connections, and be strategic and effective. So we welcome you to this session today, where we're going to be talking about how do we strengthen our agenda for Ward 7. And so we have Erwin Voister, who has been leading the Ward 7 Faith Council, or I'm not sure we call it the council, but the Ward 7 Faith Leaders Group, and he's a part of the East River Family Strengthening Collaborative. And so we invited Erwin to come and share a little bit about what the group has been doing so far, because this Faith Summit is part of that whole effort. And so we want to just continue it. And so we welcome you, Erwin.
Thank you, Sean. And welcome everybody. And I'm glad to be a part of this. The Ward 7 Faith Leaders was created out of a need to stem the violence in Ward 7 by utilizing the faith community. It began in 2018 as a talk, and it included Commander Habibullah. It included Vincent Gray's office. It included the Anacostia Coordinating Council, and it included East River Clergy Police Partnership with Reverend Isaac. So we came together and said, how do we bring down, or how do we reduce the violence in the ward, particularly homicides? At that time, Ward 7 was leading the number of homicides in the District of Columbia. What was missing, we felt in all of the efforts, was the faith community. We did see in Ward 7 that on a monthly basis, in Ward 8, on a monthly basis, the faith community, along with the police department, came together and they met, they talked about resources, they planned activities. We didn't have such a space or a organization like that in Ward 7. And hence, the Ward 7 Faith Leaders was born. This effort started in 2019. It launched at the 6th District. And East River serves as the facilitator. We want to bring the faith community together and the resources together for us to work together to reduce the violence in the ward. And again, we've been meeting for almost 2 years now, doing some storming, forming, and now we're norming. And we have this conference that I'm so excited that Reverend Dr. Sean Jagaday put this together, because this helps strengthen us. And I'm happy for everyone that's on the line today. I'm sure those that participate in the conference got a lot out of it thus far. We plan to get even more out of it today. And again, we can move forward with the Ward 7 Faith Leaders making an impact. So I look forward to working with everybody after this conference with our continued dialogue on how to reduce the violence in Ward 7.
Thank you so much, Erwin. It's a blessing to hear that history, and we wanted to include that here because we want everyone to understand the whole context. And sometimes it takes layers upon layers and steps upon steps as we build together as a community. And so we want to also acknowledge, as Erwin said, there's so many partners that's involved in this work. I'm glad to see that we have joining us. We have Sheila Bunn, the representative from Council Member Vincent Gray's office, who's the council member of Ward 7. So welcome. We know that the council member's office is very important in any of the strategies that we launch here in Ward 7 because of the support and the resources that they offer. We're also glad to see members from our Metropolitan Police Department, who we recognize as very valuable partners within this work and in the community. Welcome members of the faith community, different churches and organizations. We recognize there's churches, mosques, synagogues, all members of faith within our community. We know that these various partners are very much connected with residents and families and serving them every day. So we're glad to see you. Welcome also we have a couple of people as representatives from DC government. And so we're grateful for those agencies because this is really a collaborative work. And so I want to spend just a couple of minutes to create context for how we're going to move forward. And so I'm going to share my screen here, and I will put this I'm so glad that you all are family, right? Because you won't laugh at my rudimental artwork, okay? But hopefully you'll get what I'm trying to say. And so this is going to create some context in terms of how we are strengthening our vision and our strategies as we move forward as the Ward 7, as the faith community, both in Ward 7 and more broadly, moving into 2021 and in the months to come. And so I've been doing nonprofit and community work for a long time, for more than 20 years. I've served both in the business sector, the government sector, and including serving as a senior pastor and an associate pastor. And so through these experiences, I've come to learn a few things. And this is just my way of presenting what I believe is our greatest opportunity to be successful in providing solutions to our community. And so this yellow highlighted area that you see in the middle, that's the area where we can be most successful. And so what does this mean? This outer circle that you see, that's the faith-based perspective. We have lots of partners that are doing work with us. And you have, as I said, you have people from the government sector, business, health, and so forth. Anytime they partner with the faith community, it's something very important to understand. Members of the faith community, we don't do this work in the same way that maybe a social service agency would do. For the most part, when members of the faith community engage in outreach and providing solutions in our community, we do it from the perspective of reconciling people back to a place where they can most receive what God has in store for them. And so when we look at crime, or when we look at lack of affordable housing or limited food access, we always look at those things from a perspective as things that get in the way of people experiencing the fullness of God in their lives. And so also for faith-based community, we are operating from a perspective that we have a passion and commitment for God's people because of the passion and love that we have for God and for our faith. And so our faith influences why we do things. It motivates us because of the love that God has for all people, but it also influences how we do things. We are always going to be looking at whether the decisions and we make and the partnerships we form support the vision that we have for our character and our faith. And so that's the outer circle. Everything that we do falls within that context. Now, the other thing, sometimes we get frustrated when we launch activities and stuff and they don't work and we don't understand why. And the reason why is because good ideas aren't good enough, right? It's not enough to just want to help people in your community. You need to be strategic and you need to be informed. And so this circle up at the left where it says skills and resources, we want the solutions and the strategies that we have to be skills and resource based. So in fact, let me go back and start with the other one, place based, right? Even within Ward 7, we have multiple neighborhoods with wherever you are. I see that one of our guests, Tremaine, is here from New York. Even within New York, you have different boroughs and then different neighborhoods within those boroughs. One of the things that I've come to understand is that every problem and every solution is unique to the place where it happens. In my work that I was doing with MPD a couple of years ago and DC government in trying to prevent violence in two of the housing developments within the city, I learned that typically within a place, you have what's called, I believe it's the 80-20 rule. And we have a couple of officers on the line, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But typically within any place, you have 20% of the people who are creating 80% of the problems, right? So it's a very isolated number of people. And then also, typically when crimes or incidents happen, challenges happen, they always are committed by people, the place where they're committed, the people who commit them operate in that same area on a regular basis. It's usually someplace close to where they work or they go to school. People usually don't come from a totally far place, another state or a whole nother area to commit a crime. And so this is why it's important as people of faith to understand and target our areas in specific neighborhoods. Sometimes even within a neighborhood, it needs to be a particular housing development or a particular street. And we see the example of that with East River Family Strengthening Collaborative, who has launched an effort on the Minnesota Avenue corridor, right? So we're going to use that example throughout this. The Minnesota Avenue corridor has specific challenges, unique area access to different routes, open opportunities where problems and things are coming in, different ups and downs in development that are impacting that place, right? So when we look at churches or faith-based organizations launching an effort, we don't want you to try to develop a solution that you're going to try to do citywide, right? Choose one specific place. Then what we want to do is we want to look at the skills and the resources that are present and available to that specific place, right? So if we're looking at the Minnesota Avenue corridor, who's already present in terms of faith-based organizations around that corridor? What agencies do they have access to, like Department of Behavioral Health, MPD Outreach, Department of Employment Services, that they might be able to engage in that specific place. We know that right in that area, East River Collaborative is located on that corridor. So that's why they chose that place. There are programs and services that they offer that they can uniquely provide to that community that's right around them, right? And so we want to, and I can't emphasize this enough, sometimes, because people of faith, can we just be real since it's Saturday morning? We have so much faith, and we do. We believe that God can do anything, right? But God is also a God of wisdom and order. The Bible says, in all of your getting, get knowledge and understanding and wisdom. And so sometimes we say, oh, we're going to launch this massive effort to be able to provide let's say domestic violence, right? We're going to support people who are survivors of domestic violence. And then we talk to people in the faith-based organization that says, well, who in your organization has training and understands counseling and understands the unique perspective of domestic violence? And they say, God will provide. Yes, God will provide, but God is providing the knowledge that you need to get help from someone else. So this is very important. It's okay if you don't have those skills and resources right there present, but what that means is that you then need to partner with someone who does have those skills and resources so that they can provide what's necessary for that unique place. And then finally, the needs. Every place has specific needs, even when you look at something as broad as crime. So if I say gun violence, for example, if we're looking at gun violence, the gun violence that happens in Hillcrest or Deanwood is very different from the gun violence that happens in Trinidad or in River Terrace, right? Remember, violence happens because of multiple waves and incidents that preceded that one situation. And so it could be that the situation is due to human trafficking in one area, or it could, but in another area, it may have to do with drug trafficking, or in another area, it may have to do with a turf issue, you know? And so we want to be very specific, even in something as more, I won't say less, you know, challenging, but something like housing, right? If your faith-based organization is addressing, and I'm watching my time because I want to give enough time for us to dialogue. If your faith-based organization wants to look at providing affordable housing, well, we want to look at the unique place that we want to provide that housing, what skills, resources are available for there, and what are the unique needs around that. In some places, people need, you know, if it's for seniors, they need housing that has access to other support services, right? And so that's a need that's specific to that. And so I bring all of those things together to say that as a faith community, as we move forward with our monthly meetings and with even sessions and opportunities in between, we're going to be looking at these different areas to see how we can begin to equip ourselves and build strategic partnerships so that we can always be operating in that highlighted area, right? So we can always be making sure that we're maximizing our opportunity to be most effective. And so hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to just stop sharing for a minute so I can see everybody. I'm still trying to get used to this. So does anyone have any questions or comments with regard to that? And I made it so that each person can unmute themselves. We have a smaller group here, so I think we'd be okay with that. Does anyone have any questions or feedback? Okay. So what we want to do now, and we have a small group, so we should be able to be interactive here this morning. We want to begin to talk specifically about our area, right? And so I want you to think about, for those of you who are joining us from areas other than Ward 7, we're glad that you're able to join us. And what we hope that will happen is that you will hear ideas and strategies that you'll then be able to translate into your own environment. For those of you who are connected to Ward 7, we want to begin to talk through these different things. We want to hear your feedback around how we can engage going forward to be able to continue to be in that highlighted area. So I'm going to invite Wendy Lyons is going to, I'm switching over now. So she's going to share her screen and take notes for us as we talk. And we want to try to talk through it. And so I know it's early. I can't see most of you, but I hope that everyone will be able to engage and get some ideas. And so I may call on a couple of people. So, Wendy, once you get a chance to get that up, we'll go ahead and ask some questions. The first question that I want to ask is, what is the best way for us to begin to connect faith-based organizations and agencies within neighborhoods or within places around like a specific housing development or street or a community? Let's see who we have. And I see we have Pastor Tucker this morning too. Welcome. I know you're doing an incredible amount of work there in your community as well. And so is Erwin still there on the line? Okay, it looks like Erwin stepped away. All right.
Hello, hi. This is Octavia Shaw. I'm with the Families First DC initiative for the Family Success Center. So I think that it would be a great way and an opportunity for community-based organizations and faith-based organizations, businesses to come together it's all for the well-being of our community, right? So as much as we can, meet and figure out how to, as you've already been mentioning, a strategic way to really partner. There's no competition, but really work together in a collaborative way. So I am here, definitely open to that. I'm the program manager for the initiative, but East River actually has 2 sites in Ward 7, and there are 3 other family success centers as well. So we just launched in October. We started programming and really just looking for ways to partner and to help families. So if there isn't a service at the site, then we definitely want to be able to connect them to where their needs can be met.
Thank you for that, Octavia. I'm so glad that you shared about the effort for the Family Success Centers, because that effort is a great example of how you identified a place and did some strategic planning. For those of you who don't know, the Family Success Center was funded and launched by Mayor Muriel Bowser here in DC, where she allotted, I believe it was $4 million for the creation of family success centers that are located in Ward 7 and Ward 8 of Washington, DC. And these 2 wards tend to be places where you have families who are under-resourced and have specific social and support needs. And so the first part of the Family Success Center spent the first, I believe, 9 months or 6 months or so strategically planning, bringing together families, agencies, and organizations in a specific area. Like over where I am and live, it's Benning Park and here. And then began to create strategies to launch programs that would meet those specific needs based on the resources that they were there. And thank you, the resources that were there and the needs that were there in that community. So Octavia, can you say a little bit about what work was done to identify people and organizations that were in those specific areas that you guys chose?
Yes, so I'll start. In terms of the rationale for the neighborhoods and the communities, we found that almost 3/4 of the families came from these particular neighborhoods. So we really did some mapping to look at the data that we had at CFSA, Child and Family Services Agency, as well as crime and prevention, and also, of course, the health determinants, social determinants. So it began with that research, and then after that research in the neighborhoods were, strategically identified, then an RFP went out to the community because we wanted to make sure that it was neighborhood based in place, as you stated, not from the government, but really in the community. So there was an RFP process, and then we had our internal team develop the structure and infrastructure for the families for this initiative. And then once the after the application process, there were 9 organizations that were awarded in December of 2019. And then we went through a 9-month planning process. And that planning process involved, we created the DC Family Success Center Network so that all of the community-based organizations would be at the table together and walking alongside us to develop the process and the entire plan. So we built out, we also established a community advisory council so that there were members directly from the community, not just staff members from the organization, to be at the table as well as a part of the process. Of course, staffing, each organization is required to have some sub-grants and sub-partners, again, just so that the community, it's a community effort, even, with economics as well. So through that 9 months, we worked we met on a monthly basis to look at just like the evaluation framework, building that out. We visited other sites as well in New Jersey, which has a similar model, and also San Francisco to look at the resources and the model that they have there. They've done a phenomenal job at really seeing the increase in the protective factors from the family level indicators, but also they have been able to reduce child abuse and neglect through this particular model. And that's seen throughout the country with 3,000 type family resource centers, family success centers. But if you're more interested in like the details of kind of the weeds of that 9-month process, I certainly don't mind sharing that. But it was definitely setting up the entire system for evaluations, for the collaborative process, also working with DC government agencies to make it seamless for the organizations, to help the organizations build capacity and have direct access to government resources, a myriad of things, but all in the spirit and vein of collaboration.
Thank you. And that's really helpful. One of the things the reason why I wanted you to share that is so we can all begin to understand the opportunity for faith-based organizations to connect with some of these family resources and establish partnerships, such as like what Reverend Karen Carter and Ernest Clover talked about, how you can maximize resources. Sometimes, especially for small faith-based organizations, we get discouraged because we say there's so many problems in my community. We don't have the money or we don't have the space. We don't know what it is that we can do. But we want you to see that there are existing resources and opportunity that are present in the community that can benefit greatly, just immensely, from the involvement of faith-based organizations. Because what we bring as the faith community is we bring valued and trusted relationships with the residents in our neighborhood. And so we bring the ability to be able to connect family with resources, but also to help these community organizations understand the best way to relate to and to provide services to the people that we have relationships with. Sometimes programs, they can be great, they have funds behind them, great ideas and research behind them, but without having the unique insight that the faith community has about specific families and the nuances, the cultural sensitivities of our different neighborhoods, they don't always work. And so we wanted you to see this. And so one of the other things, thank you. And so that's the first piece. So as we begin to go forward in these these Ward 7 faith meetings, we'll continue to talk about and identify the neighborhood or the place that we're targeting. And we'll be doing some asset mapping to talk about what are the resources and faith organizations that are already present. What are the government agencies that are already there? Community-based agencies. How can we partner with the people that are there? And so I want to segue a little bit into the resources, right? Skills-based. We have so many skills and resources available in Ward 7. And I know this just from being in Ward 7. I've lived in Ward 7 the entire time I've lived in DC. I've been in the homes of families and talked to them and been amazed at how individual families are providing services and support to the residents around them. In fact, one example, when I was over in the Clay Terrace community, I met a woman who was leading a program called Evelyn's Closet. And it was amazing. A lot of people didn't know about this program, and Evelyn's Closet was providing free clothes. It was a store where people could just come in and shop, and she was using the center that's right there at the corner across from the park, Marvin Gaye Park, and she would let people come in and shop for free, and people would donate clothes, and you didn't hear about it. So what are some of the ways that we can begin to identify both the very public resources that are available, like these family success centers, but also some of those not so popular or not so well-known resources? And for those of you on the line who have some of those resources available in your own organization, like I see we have Ryan Nickens here, and we have Pastor Tucker here, and Reverend Karen Curry. Can you share a little bit about some of the resources and skills that you have? And then also we invite everyone to share about how, as we go forward, we can find out about some of those not so popular resources that would be very beneficial to our community.
Good morning, everyone. Great segue. Pastor Sean, I was going to mention that communication and awareness are so critical because there's so much that is going on, so many skills and resources that are actively in use, but we don't always know about them. And sometimes we're quick to say there's nothing happening, and it's simply that we're not aware. And so one of the things that has been very important with regard to the Ward 7 faith leaders, as well as other groups like this that come together, is the coming together and providing a forum and a place where that information can be shared, where we can learn about those kinds of things that are going on. And so we that are now a part of this, we now have an obligation to share what we know, talk to others. If they are not able or willing to come to the gatherings, we can still promote or get the information from them and share. And I appreciate after our monthly meetings, Erwin is always so diligent and gathers the chat information and other highlights and sends that out. So then we have direct people that we can contact at the organizations and really follow up and do the things that are necessary to work together so that people who are already out doing and moving and sharing can connect together. One of the things that we have going at the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church is we have MBI Health Services, and they are utilizing some of the space at our church, and they provide mental health services, which are very needed in our community. And we again are a church, so we provide a certain level, a certain type of mental and spiritual health, but not the kind of targeted treatment that an MBI can provide. And so our pastor, Dr. Kendra Curry, had the foresight to say, let's work with a group that can take the ball further than we could alone and allow them to really go in and address some things that need to be dealt with regard to the health of the mind. And then we can take it from there. And so there are persons who come who faithfully to get the support and resources that MBI provides. And then they have connected with us for that next level of their health and living. And so it's been a blessing to see how some of those individuals have really blossomed as a result of that. And so some of our organizations, we may be blessed with space that may be underutilized, or maybe there's creative ways that we can welcome in a group. And sometimes it's at risk. Not everyone welcomed us welcoming MBI. And we had all of people predicting things that would happen that would be so horrible in the neighborhood because those persons coming to get help. And thankfully, those things did not materialize and have not. And so you do kind of step out sometimes at risk when you do that. But partnering and providing other resources and combining skills and the desire that we have for people to be whole, they have the same. And people are getting whole because of that. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Reverend Karen. And so and I just want to reiterate what Reverend Karen said, is that we have these meetings. They're every first Saturday of the month. And we encourage you, if you're not on the email list already, to get an invitation to those meetings. We ask you to please, I'll make sure I put my email address actually, Erwin, if you can put your email address in the chat box, Erwin Voister will make sure that you get added to that invitation list so that you can join us on Saturday mornings. And what we're going to begin to do, we have a steering committee for that, which the Ward 7, the once a month meeting, which I'm on. As we plan our agendas going forward, we will make sure that we're looking at ways that we can identify the resources that are already available in our community. I like some of the ideas that we have, like Ebony said, creating a living document, like a Google Doc where we can list all of these. And we know that Reverend Andre Towner And Ward 8 is working on an asset mapping effort with the Anacostia Coordinating Council, where they're doing asset mapping of all the faith-based organizations. We're reaching out to Reverend Towner to see if we can use that same form that they're using in Ward 8 in Ward 7. And so when you come on the next meeting, we'll share will be December 5th, we'll be able to get that information from you. And we encourage you that if you know of resources in your neighborhood that may not be well known, but you know could benefit other Ward 7 neighborhoods, or even could help benefit within that own neighborhood, we encourage you to invite that person, even if they're not part of a faith-based organization, to that Saturday morning meeting so that we can begin to collect this information. And so is there anyone else that wanted to share in terms of skills and resources before we move on to our next topic, our next question?
Say a few things.
I would like to share if that's okay. All right, good morning, everybody. So my name is Dr. Ebony Caldwell. I am a psychiatry resident at Howard University Hospital. And I thank you all for allowing me to join today. So I and one of my medical students are doing an initiative to actually join community-based organizations and faith organizations to provide Narcan, so opioid overdose trainings. And we're also providing the actual Narcan kits. So if any of you all would like us to do a training for your congregation or for your organization, my email address is up here behind my screen, but I'll also put it in the chat if anyone's interested.
Thank you, Dr. Ebony. Thank you. And welcome. We love when our Howard students are able to engage the community, because it benefits us with your expertise, and it also benefits you by being able to be actively involved during your education. And so one final question, and that I want to invite everyone to. Just as a reminder, this is just the start. This is really our way of sharing sort of the direction that we're headed in terms of the Ward 7 faith community. We're going to do a lot more work each month at those first meetings, where we're going to begin to develop actual I don't call them projects, actual strategic responses to challenges within our community. So we're inviting you to come to those monthly meetings. But one of the final things that we want to do here is to talk about needs, right? And a lot of times when we talk about needs, this is one of the insights that just really blessed me in doing some of the work that I was doing in Lincoln Heights and Clay Terrace. Sometimes as people of faith, and even as service providers, we have our own interpretation of what we think people need. Sometimes we automatically think, oh, a person needs a job, or, oh, a person just needs parent training, or a person needs a mentorship, right? We decide for them what we believe they need based on the behavior we witness and that we think is we interpret as negative. What I want to invite us to do is think about, how do we more effectively learn the needs of the people that we want to serve in our communities? And there's two ways that I think are always important when you develop strategic responses to challenges based on needs. One is, what does the research say? Right? A lot of times people look at Ward 7 and Ward 8 and say, oh, everybody's poor, or, oh, crime is the biggest issue. But what does the research say? What does the data say? And we have a ton of data in DC. And then the second thing is, what are the stories? What do the people say? Because sometimes we look at reports and research, but we don't know the story side of it. We may look and just see 911 calls or where ambulances were dispatched, but what we don't know, and I remember this is why this is important. Like when we were doing work over in Clay Terrace, we were doing some mapping. And we were overlaying data maps over top of each other, like statistics from the schools, statistics from crime, statistics, location from churches. And we recognized on the map that there was a ton of 911 calls coming for overdose at one particular place on a particular day. And we were like, well, what in the world is going on? And what we discovered was that one of the government agencies had a van that was a needle exchange program coming to that exact location like that day. And it was really, really helpful information. And so as the faith community, what are some of the ways, like statistics are easy. We'll talk about in our Saturday morning meetings, some of the data sources, and this is where our partnerships with agencies help us, some of the data. But how can you rely on your trust relationships that you have with the community to find out what the story is, right? To know what the personal experience is, to give us more insight about strategies that we can do. Anybody want to share about that? I'm going to start putting people on the spot.
Good morning, this is Julia. I'm not a faith leader, but I believe that the simple act of just saying hello, whether we are entering our institutions for Bible study, rehearsal, or an actual worship service, as we are getting out of our cars, just saying hello, being intentional and being engaged in the community in which God has blessed us to plant an institution to be able to show his love. We can actually show that love by attending the meetings just to hear firsthand what the broader community is saying. One thing I want to use as an example is Pastor Devin Turner. I know that when he was praying over his church and things of that nature, he would just sit in Marvin Gaye Park. And because he was consistent in sitting in the park, the gentleman then began to wonder, who is this guy? And they began to engage in dialogue. And so it was through his consistency of sitting in the park and praying over the park and those persons seeing him that they then began to develop or took the initiative to then speak to him, which then led to a level of trust and divulging of what their unique needs are. So I definitely believe like that is one critical way. Another way is creatively through vacation Bible schools. And I know that in the COVID posture, we have to approach it a little differently. But like we have these children from our communities that are coming to the vacation Bible school. So really being intentional in not only sharing God's word with the children, but from the mouth of babes, actually sitting and listening to the children when they're talking, and then using the network that you're putting together to begin to identify, for instance, the Urban Institute, when they went up into Benning Terrace, they were very intentional in sitting down with the neighbors and asking them, what service providers have you experienced? What was that experience like? Who is the best person in that agency to come over here and provide services and things of that nature? And we as the faith community, we can model that even more. During the peace walks, it's great to, walk in different communities when the violence occurs, but maybe every fourth Friday we're going to walk in Kenilworth, and every third Friday we're going to walk in Lincoln Heights, so that there's a certain level of intentionality and consistency so the community can get to know us, so that they can then begin to share.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I love what you're saying. It happens organically. In DC, we're so busy and we're so such a commuting place that we tend to be moving quickly from one place to another. But taking time to be present, be in our communities, even when we don't have an agenda, right? When there's not a program, when there's not a homicide or an incident, a critical incident, or when we're not there to be, just being present. So that way, when we do go to provide food to people, they already know us, right? It takes away some of that, that feeling that people can have about needing services when they feel comfortable with the people who are providing services. And so as our Ward 7 faith community is moving forward, we want to talk about how we begin to incorporate that in, like not just be in our own, I know sometimes with schools we say up in our ivy tower, but not just meeting amongst ourselves, but being present amongst the people that we serve and asking ourselves constantly, what relationships have I built this week to be able to hear the hearts of the people and the families that I serve? And how can I create space in doing that? So thank you for that. And we appreciate Julia. Julia is in one of those, the mayor's office. I'm going to get it wrong. I call it MOCR's, Mayor's Office, a community response. Julia, why don't you tell us?
Today I'm here as just Julia, a Christian that lives in Ward 7, but my daytime job, I have the honor of serving as the director of the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services.
Thank you, Julia. And I was also going to say she's an amazing Ward 7 resident, proud mom, active community member. And so we're going to begin to wrap up. We want to be able to have all of your information and your insight. I'm going to type my email address in the chat room so that you have it. I believe all of you have it already. But again, we want to connect you with this work that's ongoing. If you weren't able to register for the Faith Impact Summit, we encourage you to do that so that we have your information and can include you in the ongoing training opportunities and strategic sessions that we plan on having. Before I finish this, I want to invite you to an opportunity that's coming up just next week. And so we have I want to try to see if I can pull it up. I don't think I'm sharing my screen. Sorry. Okay. So the piece is Reverend Delante on. I see Peace Fellowship is on here. So next week there's a Peace Summit. Very quickly, can you tell us about it and the dates and how people can connect?
Sure. Hey, good morning, everybody. Next week on Wednesday and Thursday from 6 to 7:30, Peace Walks DC is partnering with the Coalition of Concerned Mothers, the Alliance of Concerned Men, Justice and Equality, East River Family Strengthening Collaborative, Moms Demand Action, Enough, Team Enough, March for Our Lives, Miss Hardy and Guns Down DC, a couple of the ANCs, and we're doing what we did last year, but we're doing it virtually. Last year we held a Peacemaker Summit at Idea Academy, and the goal of the summit is just to really go one layer deeper on our conversations this week at the Faith Impact Summit, and to really just drill one layer deeper around what does it mean for us to specifically create a peace agenda for our city, focusing on the most impacted wards of Ward 7 and Ward 8 and Ward 5 and Ward 4. So we just wanted to invite everybody to come out and to, if you haven't already registered, please register for the Peacemaker Summit. It'll be the Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll have a peace walk on Saturday in honor of Christopher Brown, who is one of the young brothers that was killed this summer in the Greenway mass shooting off of Minnesota Avenue, 32nd in Du Bois. We're partnering with her family to put that peace walk on in his honor, and really in honor of all of the moms and families who have lost loved ones this year. So that peace walk will be starting at the Dollar Tree or the UPO parking lot at 3 p.m. on Saturday. And it'll be ending actually at Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church with one of our partners who you've heard a lot from at the summit, Reverend Dr. Kendra Curry and Reverend Karen Curry are hosting us after a full day of flu shots and meal deliveries that they'll be doing there
Awesome.
on site at the church. Dr. Jagaday has the link and the flyer and everything, and you can just look at that in the chat. One of the things that's different, finally, in closing, I'll say one of the things that's different this year from last year is not only that we're virtual, but also that we're bilingual and trying to be intentional about centering the voices of youth. So we'll be having a sister from Ward 4, her name is Hennessy's, who some may have heard. She was on the news. She was arrested trying to sell pupusas.
Pastor, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, but we have a 10 o'clock summit, and I thought that I would be able to start the other summit without close. I'm really sorry to cut you off, Pastor Delante. So what I'm going to do is you did send me the flyer. Because I had turned over the host rights, I can't share my screen right now because we need to try to get into the next session that's starting at 10 o'clock for mental health. But we will make sure that we email out to all of the registrants the email when we send the message today after the summit with the links to the recordings. So the last thing that we want to do, we wanted to share the Peace Summit that's coming up because we're very much working in partnership with all of the people within Ward 7 and trying to elevate all these opportunities. So we invite you to join us for our final 2 sessions today at 10 o'clock. What I'm doing is I'm putting the link right here in the Zoom in the chat, so that you can copy and paste it so that as soon as you end this one, you can click right into that one at 10 o'clock. We have Ryan Nickens and Pastor Andre Ivy are going to talk about addressing mental health and trauma. So thank you, all of you. Again, the next Ward 7 Faith Summit, or the next Ward 7 Faith Leaders meeting is Saturday, December 5th. Email Irvin Voicer so that you can get on the distribution list, but we will also include information for that meeting in the email we'll send out to all the registrants. And so thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll join us for the next two sessions, the one at 10 o'clock addressing mental health, and then the one at 11 o'clock, which is our closing session with Pastor Aaron Graham, which is talking about advocacy. And so gracious God, we thank you for the opportunity to come together. We thank you for how you call us as a faith community to partner with each other and to also partner with community and government organizations. God, we thank you that there's no such thing as sacred and secular, but that you are God of all creation. You've called us to be bridge builders. You've called us to be solution makers. And we thank you for that. Thank you for every person present. And we thank you for the wisdom and strategies and responses that will come from this session. Thank you, everyone. Please go ahead and